First tonight, Donald Trump has been warmly welcomed by Saudi Arabia to by the kingdom's crown prince Mohammed bin Salman. The US president was given a military guard of honor on the first stop of his Middle East tour, which he hopes will help secure huge investment deals. Mr. Trump will also visit Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. The main focus of the trip is expected to be on trade. Correspondents say that for a president who styles himself as the world's biggest deal maker, this trip is less about peace deals than about deals for profit. There's talk about investments worth more than $1 trillion in the US economy in sectors ranging from artificial intelligence to energy. They say it is emblematic of the transactional approach of President Trump. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Chicago by the Republican strategist and chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So a tour of the Middle East with a visit to the region's wealthiest countries, and the emphasis is on the economic importance of the Strip, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, Charles. That's how the president leads. He's always been, business first, economic growth first, and everything else follows. But it's not that he's ignoring peace and security and defense. I mean, he actually spoke quite a bit about it in his speech today in Riyadh. And I think that, he not only leads with peace through strength, military strength, but also peace through business. And we saw that in his first term with the Abraham Accords. And I think we'll see more of that.
So, I mean, you've touched on it briefly, but I suppose that the question is, will international diplomacy get much of a look in? Because, I mean, there are several regional issues at play which the US could have a role in solving, from the war in Gaza to the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah, Charles, it's a great question, and I think that they're not mutually exclusive. I think the president is not, putting defense and security and peace in the back seat here. He actually talked about it quite a bit in his speech, and look at what he's doing. Concurrent with this trip, in the last 5 days, his team has essentially stopped a potential war between India and Pakistan. The Houthis basically surrendered and agreed to stop bombing commercial and naval ships in the region. He's got progress in Iran. He's got possibly a meeting between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul this week. Put the China deal together. He got an American hostage released from Gaza from Hamas. So. And that's on the heels of the US-UK trade deal last Thursday. So, it's been a really great week for him. So I think, he's got peace and diplomacy right up there with transactional business opportunities. So you can do both, and that's what he's really good at.
And of course, Greg, he's not visiting the US's top ally in the region, Israel, on this trip. Is that significant? Is it a snub?
I don't think so, Charles. There is no doubt about his support of Israel. That's clearly in contrast to the Biden administration, which tried to play both sides of this conflict. And so I don't think there's any risk of that. It wouldn't surprise me if he made a stop on the way home to Tel Aviv or to Jerusalem. So that's a really important ally for the U.S. And he's been really consistent in his support for Israel in this conflict.
Face it, he's done a lot of deals in the Middle East without consulting Israel. I mean, he reached agreement, as you mentioned there, with Hamas to release the American hostage. He's agreed a deal with the Houthis in Yemen. He's proceeding, much to Israel's chagrin, with discussions with Iran on a nuclear deal.
Yeah, look, I think the president is no fan of multilateral discussions. He likes to do bilateral deals. He's doing it with the support of Israel, for sure. In fact, Israel was critical in attacking or defending against the Houthis, even while the U.S. was doing it periodically, but not consistently in the Biden administration. They were responding to attacks, but barely. And whereas President Trump has gone and he's terminated 83 terrorist leaders just in his first 100 days. He's essentially eliminated the threat from the Houthis. And that's all with cooperation from Israel. Israel did the heavy lifting in the last 12 months or so, 12 or 18 months in the region, basically defeating Hezbollah, putting a lot of pressure on the Houthis, defending against Iran, the attacks from Iran. So I think the cooperation between the U.S. and Israel is unstoppable for the most part. In fact, the U.S. has sent additional carrier fleets and carrier groups to the region. So I don't think there's any doubt about his commitment to defending or supporting Israel here.
But when it comes to those money deals, I mean, Israel doesn't fit in, does it? It can't afford to give the United States the same kind of thing that the Gulf nations are offering.
Well, of course not. We're talking about, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. I mean, they have a tremendous amount of oil wealth. Israel, of course, as you know, doesn't have any significant, if any, oil assets. But Israel has done a phenomenal job with their economy, with a great amount of cooperation with the United States, especially around technology. And so they have a great tech sector. So I think, the president looks at Israel as something that the other countries in the region could model themselves after in many ways, turning their economy around and creating something out of nothing. And so that's important for the president. And you saw that with the Abraham Accords in the first term. And again, in his speech in Riyadh today, he referenced quite directly the Abraham Accords and how successful they were about, bringing peace to the region, peace through economic cooperation rather than boots on the ground and people fighting each other.
So the focus then on the Strip is all about lucrative deals, which he claims will make the American people wealthier and more prosperous. But there are also a lot of people who are wondering just how much wealthier and prosperous he will return from the Strip. Is this visit about national interest or personal interest?
Oh, absolutely national interest. The president has sacrificed quite a bit of his wealth to be president in both terms and fought off the weaponization of the justice system. That's cost him a fortune as well. So I think what's important to the president is that the economy develops or redevelops again, like it did in the first term, where everybody or most Americans are sharing in the upside. During the Obama and Biden years, those of us in the top 10% that owned equities and bonds and property did quite well. The problem is Main Street did not do very well. And in his first term, the bottom half of income earners in America did much better than the top in terms of wage growth. And that's inflation adjusted wage growth. So he really cares about the real economy, the Main Street economy. And I think that, the foreign direct investment from the Saudis, from the Emiratis, will help with developing industry. There's going to be I would expect a boom in manufacturing, and that's going to affect the blue collar workers much more than it affects the wealthy class.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I mean, he has a long history of business dealings in these three countries. And in fact, his Trump organization clinched a $5 billion deal with an entity closely linked to the Qatari government. He's also closely invested with the Saudis and Emiratis as well, from real estate to crypto. So there is the appearance there of impropriety and self-dealing, isn't there?
No, I think it's important to point out, Charles, because it's a great question and an important issue, is that this is the most transparent administration we've had in generations. So he is doing everything above board. If the Trump family is continuing to develop their real estate business, their property business, their hotel business, good for them. You'll notice, Eric and Don Jr. are not involved in the administration. So, and same thing with Jared and Ivanka. So look, if they want to pursue their business interests, as long as it's transparent, this is the most scrutinized president we've ever had. So believe me, there are people following him around, looking for him to, as we say in America, blow a stop sign. So I don't think there's any risk that he'll do anything underhanded or off the radar, as opposed to the last administration who took, whose family enriched themselves quite deliberately in a in a quiet way, not being transparent at all. They had shell companies set up. It took years of forensic accounting to find out that Joe and Hunter and Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, were getting paid by the Chinese, the Russians, Kazakhstan, Romania. I mean, these are, in the case of Russia and China, adversaries of the United States were paying the Biden family. And that was done. They tried to hide it. It ended up failing in the long run, but it took years to find that out. So this administration is the total opposite. If they're doing business, because that's what they do, they're business people, and President Trump was not a career politician. So that's, I mean, good for them as long as they're transparent and honest about it, which so far they are.
Well, I mean, when you layer onto that the gift from the Qatari government of what purports to be an Air Force One plane, a Boeing 747 airliner that would cost about $400 million on the free market, I mean, how much is that Exhibit A in terms of the deals he hopes to strike? And how much does that raise legitimate questions in terms of whose bottom line is being served here?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, with all the accomplishments of the last week, and unfortunately, his opposition media in the United States has decided to focus on this potential gift from the Qataris. Yeah, if there could be some ethical questions. If it was a personal gift to him, if it's a gift to the United States, then that's different. We've had that for generations. I mean, going back to the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France in the 1800s. And so, I don't think it's a big deal. It's probably not going to happen. I think in many ways, President Trump is just having fun with it and trolling his political opponents. But again, in my view, it's just a distraction. There's more important things going on, most of which are very positive, and most of which he discussed quite openly in his speech in Riyadh today.
Greg, I want to thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.
Especially for your clarity of thought. We appreciate that very much. Greg Swenson is the Republican strategist and chair of Republicans Overseas UK. He was talking to me on the line there from Chicago.